Thousands of files from the Jeffrey Epstein estate have been released, with the Republicans publishing 20,000 pages after Democrats shared 3 emails which referred to President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender. Within the files, Epstein alleged that Donald Trump spent hours with one of his victims in previously unseen exchanges between the sex offender and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in prison now. The documents also contain new exchanges with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Epstein appears to confirm that the King's brother had his picture taken with Virginia Giuffre, which the former prince had always denied. He denied ever meeting her. The White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt has called this a Democrat hoax.
This administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump, as we have, of course, seen with this government shutdown.
Well, that was Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Joining us now is Julia Manchester, White House reporter for The Hill. Good evening to you, Julia.
Good evening, Carol. Thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, there's a huge cache of documents here. But let's talk first of all about the references to President Trump, because, of course, he's always said that he ended his connection, didn't he, with Jeffrey Epstein once he was convicted of offences. What have we learned tonight?
Well, look, there are a number of references in these emails. You know, at one point, Jeffrey Epstein says that Donald Trump knew about the quote unquote girls. He talks about Donald Trump being the dog that doesn't bark. And there's a few other references. So essentially, I think a lot of us were expecting President Trump to be referenced in these emails. We knew that that was coming. We knew there had been reporting suggesting that. However, the White House very much maintaining that this is from the past, that Donald Trump cut off his ties with Jeffrey Epstein after he was, had been convicted of sex offenses, and also after he was, quote, a creep, to use Caroline Leavitt's words, towards Virginia Giuffre, who of course was a member at Mar-a-Lago. So certainly, a major news day here in the U.S., because we knew that when these files were released and we got more information that the president was named in them, it would be a big day. But the White House very much trying to change the subject tonight.
And there is this reference to Trump spending several hours with a victim of sex trafficking. But the Republicans are insisting that is a reference to Virginia Giuffre. And she made it clear in her book that she had no problem at all with Donald Trump's behavior.
Yeah, and that's what Caroline Leavitt said today at the press briefing at the White House as well. What Republicans are saying is that Democrats, in releasing these files, are cherry picking the most, the subject lines, the sentences that will generate the most clickbait and that are the most unflattering towards President Trump. So, that's where we are right now with that. A few hours ago here in Washington, there was a vote on the discharge petition that would trigger action in the House of Representatives to on the Epstein files. We don't know when that vote could happen. It could happen as early as December, but ultimately it's unclear whether that would even pass through the Senate. So we're seeing Democrats really plowing ahead, hoping to make some sort of an inroad on this issue of the Epstein files.
There are also, aren't there, further references to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, in particular this email about that now infamous photograph of Andrew with his arm around a 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre. Andrew claimed in his Newsnight interview that he had no recollection of the photo being taken and suggested that it could perhaps have been somehow doctored. But Epstein himself talks about this, doesn't he, in one of the emails that's been released?
He does. And, I haven't covered this story from that perspective, but from the White House perspective, you're already seeing President Trump, he's distanced himself from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's been asked about this. He said, oh, this is a very sad situation, et cetera. But I think this just goes to show how big of a net Jeffrey Epstein's, I guess, network really, how big of a network Jeffrey Epstein really had with a number of these powerful figures, whether it was Donald Trump, and we don't know if there was any wrongdoing committed, or, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I think that's what's just so remarkable about this entire saga.
Yeah, and in an email in 2011, Epstein said, yes, Giuffre, was on my plane, and yes, she had her picture taken with Andrew. Julia Manchester, White House reporter for The Hill, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, we can talk now to Bob McEwen, former Republican congressman for Ohio. Good evening to you, Bob.
Great, Carol. Good to be with you.
I mean, what is your take on this huge cache of emails and other documents that have been released tonight from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and in particular, the references to Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's a lot of sound and fury. There's really obviously not much to do with Mr. Trump. They pestered Epstein's attorney and quite some time, and he mentioned that he really drove down on Epstein. He said the only way, when he was being prosecuted, this is before his death in incarceration, he said, do you have anything on Trump? Is there anything on Trump? Your salvation is you've got to have something. He said 3 times he went back to him trying to say, is there anything at all that we can use against Trump? And Epstein said, there's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing. The fact is that long before people knew what he was up to, he was a person that Trump didn't like, and obviously cut off and discontinued his membership in his club, didn't want to have anything to do with him. If there was anything there, certainly in these many, many years that the Democrats have had all this under their hat, they would have used something. The 2 things that have come out more recently about the birthday card and things are obvious forgeries. But I think what's going to happen, and of course, Epstein was a major Democrat fundraiser. And most of us Republicans didn't know anything about him. He was popular in the New York Jewish community and in the Palm Beach as well. He had many receptions and things. And a lot of good people, I'm sure, were in attendance at these events and things, but didn't know what he was up to in the back rooms. And so I think there's an effort to try to protect the people that really didn't have anything involved. But the Democrats are now, in an effort to try to get at Trump, are going to force feed this. And quite frankly, is often the case with Donald Trump. They fire a boomerang that comes back and hits them. And when they force all this out, it's going to hurt a lot of innocent people, I fear.
We've also seen in this latest cache of documents, though, one message released in which Epstein said, of course, Trump knew about the girls, and another that said that Trump had spent hours with one victim at Epstein's house. Now, is it your understanding that that individual was Virginia Giuffre, who, of course, has taken her own life, but from the grave, her book detailing what happened to her has been released?
And isn't it interesting that she did reference Mr. Trump in a very complimentary way? Really, Carol, I don't believe most of this stuff that you're going to see. I have to ask the question, is if these things were available and they went through 3 presidential campaigns and they had it available to them, why wouldn't they have used it then? Why is it suddenly now? And I think we're going to hear more strange things. But I think also the House is going to force all of it to be released. And when it does, we're going to see it. And I fear that there are going to be a lot of good people that might be damaged, but Donald Trump is not going to be one of them.
Why doesn't Donald Trump then just release the whole lot now? I mean, some people are looking at this and think, my goodness, how much more can there be to come? But why doesn't President Trump simply release the whole lot?
Carol, I think you've asked the question that many of us have asked for a long time. And I think that so many things like what he does, it comes out best in the end. and that is that he wants them released. They will be released, but for the innocent folks in Palm Beach, the leadership of many of the fine people in New York and elsewhere that were caught up in many of these fundraisers that were at Epstein's house and all that, when all of that comes out, it will not be Donald Trump that smeared these people. It will be not Donald Trump that dragged their name through the dust, but it will have been the Democrat majority that suddenly, in the last 7 or 8 months, have gotten all up on their high horse about this when they could have done it anytime they wanted to over the last 12 years. But as I repeat, he was one of their real bag carriers, and so they protected him for a long time. In the interim, they could have used it against Trump if there was any. I think we're going to find out, as we usually do, that there's nothing there. A lot of sound and fury, but they don't have anything anymore than when they tried to accuse him of other things in the court, and the court threw it out.
Wouldn't it be better if President Trump, though, did address these very specific revelations about what he knew, rather than just dismissing the whole thing as a hoax?
Well, but once you start down that road, then you're going to have 2 more tomorrow, and then 3 more on Saturday, and so his spokesman has taken them on as they come up. But the president of the United States really has other things to do. In politics, there's always 2 avenues. There's the policy avenue where you do things and accomplish things, and there's other where you throw the mud and play the political games. And parliaments and Congresses are full of both. And there are some people that just love to play in the mud and throw things, and they never accomplish anything. They don't change anything. They don't bring peace or prosperity. But that's what they love. And for those that love peace and prosperity and growth and opportunity and education and accomplish things, we just find it obnoxious that these people live, eat, drink, and sleep this kind of stuff, and they accomplish nothing in the interim. But it's always been that way. So it's the lot of anybody who's involved in politics. There are those that have nothing, an alternative to offer to what Donald Trump is bringing in peace around the world, but they will love to talk about this till the cows come home.
Let me ask you about one of the other issues. There's been a huge crisis here in the UK over the future of the BBC. We've seen the resignations of the head of news and the director general. And a lot of this, of course, goes back to the splicing in a panorama programme of the speech which President Trump gave on January the 6th. He's threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion. I mean, you know the president. Do you think he's really going to press ahead with a lawsuit on this?
Well, what you do is you highlight the issue. And the fact is that what they've done, what they did to him is what they often do to other people. And others don't have the wherewithal or the platform or the money to challenge them. And what the BBC did was a lie. They deliberately and intentionally created a falsehood and set back in their high horse as though they're presenting the facts. And I think it's highly appropriate. And how is he going to do it? If he threatens them with a dime or lets it pass, as most of us have to do because we don't have the resources to challenge an organization like the BBC, I think what he's doing is highly appropriate. It's high time that these people who call themselves journalists, who are political activists, be held accountable because they smear they destroy the faith. A democracy needs to have faith in institutions, not the least of which is the press.
And Bob, most people at the BBC are striving very hard to be fair and impartial. I actually worked at the corporation myself for many years, and most people at the BBC, I think, are trying extremely hard to be fair and impartial, although, of course, the BBC itself has admitted it made a mistake here. Look, the BBC doesn't have money apart from the licence fee payers. So, I mean, if the BBC grovels and apologises, do you think that President Trump might accept that rather than expect BBC licence fee payers to pay out?
Oh, of course. And where he's won these fights with CBS and other things in this country, he doesn't take the money. Yeah, so he gives it for some other cause. But let me just emphasize the fact that these are not mistakes. These are deliberate intentions to subvert democracy. And for people who trust the BBC to get information, And what it does, it destroys the confidence. Now, when it questions of war and peace, how can you trust these people who are proven to be intentional liars? Not a mistake.
I think the BBC has made it very clear that mistakes were made here, and the Director General, the chairman of the BBC, I should say, has apologised for that. I just wanted to ask you about one other matter, because as we speak, the House of Representatives has begun the process of voting on this deal, which could finally end the US government shutdown. Do you think it's going to go through, and how important do you think this is, Bob?
Well, I think it probably will. And just to remind people how this works, the budget runs from October to October. So this is Joe Biden's budget passed by the Democrats last October. And when they came for the new budget, it wasn't ready yet, and they wanted to extend it for another 5 weeks. And the Democrats chose to shut down the government in the interim for no reason at all. I've done dozens of interviews on this, and I've said all along, they said, "But from your experience on the Rules Committee, what do you think is going to happen?" I said, there is no way out of this cul-de-sac. They have climbed up a tree from which they have to climb down. There is no way around it. I'll tell you why Democrats did it. The party is being overrun at the moment by very far activist leftists, and they're doing permanent harm to their party. And in an effort to get Donald Trump, they've also kicked a lot of their supporters in the teeth as well. So it'll be cleaned up. But let me just tell you this: they're going to try it again in January. It's just going to be an extension for 2 months. So it's unwise in my opinion, but they'll pay the price. Democracy, as Winston Churchill said, is the worst form of government, except all the others.
Bob McEwen, former Republican congressman for Ohio. It's been really good to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.